Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. This is Brownsugar Commentary, and I'm your girl, Kayla. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe for more videos. Okay, so today this video is going to be a little bit different than my usual videos. If you watch my videos, it's going to be a little bit more on the formal side. I'm going to be talking about a topic that is a very near and dear to my heart, and that's the topic of colorism. Um, and its effects on the Black community. This is a topic that I have been going on and on about this topic on Clubhouse. If you know about Clubhouse, it's a new social media app where people are, having a lot of interesting conversation. And one recurring one is colorism. I mean, colorism is everywhere. And I briefly mentioned it in some of my videos. And today I'm really going to do a deep dive. I did a lot of research. And so I'm going to try my best to do this justice and educate those who need to be educated as much as I can. So let's get right into it. So, despite being a major topic of discussion in America, colorism is a global issue, affecting all communities of colors that have been affected by slavery, colonialism, and imperialism. I feel like many have a misunderstanding of what colorism is, or even if it exists at all, but let me be the first to tell you that it does, and it is probably more prevalent today than it ever has been. Yes, Black people as a whole are marginalized, and we have our struggles. But we cannot ignore the fact that colorism is a huge problem. For this conversation, I will be focusing the conversation to strictly the U.S. and the Black community, given that I am a Black American. I will probably also mention Black dark-skinned women more, given that I am a Black dark-skinned woman, and most of my research shows more of the experience of dark-skinned women. Also, I'm a womanist, okay? Meaning that I'm rooting for Black women, period. Okay? Especially dark-skinned women, because we have been through so much and we're always counted out last in terms of representation and advocacy. Before I officially begin my conversation or my deep dive, I want to introduce you guys to a couple of terms and definitions that we're using throughout the video. The first is colorism, which is a practice of discrimination by which those with lighter skin are treated more favorable than those with darker skin. This practice is a product of racism in the United States in that it upholds the white standards of beauty and benefits white people in the institutions of oppression in terms of media, medical world, etc. Next, we have racism, which is the individual, cultural, and institutional beliefs and discrimination that systemically oppresses people of color, which are Blacks, the Latinx community, Native Americans, and Asians. Next, we have discrimination, the mistreatment of an individual or group based on their social membership regardless of their social power. Then there is texturism, discrimination against Black people with kinkier, coarser, or type 4 hair as opposed to looser type 3 hair. Featureism, which is a discrimination against Black people who have phenotypically Black features such as a broader nose or fuller lips. Privilege is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available to only a particular person or group. And gaslighting, the act of manipulating a person by forcing them to question their thoughts, memories, and the events occurring around them. A victim of gaslighting can be pushed so far that they question their own sanity. These are the terms that you'll see me use quite frequently, or at least once or twice, and I will give these definitions as those are the definitions I will be sticking to when referencing these terms. So, as shown in my definition of colorism, colorism is directly correlated with racism and white supremacy. It feeds into the idea that the closer you are to Blackness, the worse you are. And this can also be said about texturism and featureism, as it is all a part of the one big oppressive tree, okay? They are branches. The tree is racism. The branches are colorism, featureism, texturism. You get the idea. Colorism has roots in the U.S. that go as far back as slavery, aka the house slave versus the field slave. But one of the earliest notions of colorism within the Black community is the brown paper bag test. The brown paper bag test was used during the Jim Crow era and maybe even earlier to exclude darker-skinned people out of Black social clubs and establishments. Those who were only lighter than a paper bag were granted entry and acceptance. I also want to bring up the doll test, a study used during the landmark court case Brown versus Board, conducted by two Black psychologists, Kenneth and Mamie Clark, which displayed the psychological effects of segregation of African American children. During this study, the kids have two dolls and placed in front of them, a black doll and a white doll. The kids were instructed to point to the doll that best fit the adjective/characteristic the researcher gave. For instance, which doll is the pretty doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll is the smart doll? What are the psychologists found were the kids associated the negative adjectives slash characteristics with the black doll and the positive adjectives slash characteristics with the white doll, indicating that segregation and white supremacy has damaging effects on black children's self-esteem and feeling about their blackness. Even as recently as 2010, the doll test was done and the results still showed that many black kids still chose the white doll when asked about positive characteristics. Another example I wanted to bring up were black women's recounts of colorism in literature and media. Toni Morrison's 1970 novel The Bluest Eye was one of the first novels to illustrate the inner psyche of a child affected by colorism. The novel explores the story of a young dark-skinned girl named Percola Breedlove who was constantly bullied by her black peers, sexually assaulted by her father, and verbally abused by her mother, and due to her negative self-worth, she wishes to have blue eyes, equating it to beauty and a better life. In the novel, an important quote that stood out to me said by the narrator Claudia: adults, older girls, shops, magazines, window signs. All the world had agreed that a blue-eyed, yellow-haired, pink-skinned doll was what every girl treasured. I bring this quote up because it reinforces the doll test study and how whiteness is perceived as the ideal of beauty. Some other authors who have explored their own instances with colorism as well as created characters that dealt with colorism is Maya Angelou in I Know Where the Caged Bird Sings, Gwendolyn Brooks in Maud Martha, and Alice Walker's The Color Purple. As I explained in my stereotypes in black TV and film video, colorism has been quite prevalent in television and movies. Dark-skinned women were often the best friend or sister to a lighter-skinned main character. The dark-skinned character was shown in a negative light and unfavorable compared to the light-skinned character. She was shown to be aggressive, undesirable, masculine, and hypersexual, whereas the light-skinned character is seen as dainty, soft-spoken, smart, and desirable. Some examples of colorism in television and film are Martin, Coming to America, School Days, and The Proud Family. Even the deliberate decisions to change both Janet Hubert on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, a dark-skinned woman, to a lighter-skinned woman, Daphne Reed, and Jo Marie Payton to Judy and Elder on Family Matters is a form of colorism. Also, in book to film adaptations, switching a character that was intended to be dark-skinned to a lighter-skinned character is a form of colorism. Examples include Rue in The Hunger Games, Natasha in The Sun Is Also a Star, and Star in The Hate You Give. As a dark-skinned girl, I have seen countless instances of colorism growing up. I have seen dark-skinned girls compared to various animals such as monkeys or roaches. I've heard backhand compliments such as pretty for a dark-skinned girl. I've heard many black boys say things along the lines of, I don't date dark-skinned girls because they're too aggressive or they have too much attitude. Growing up, my mother, who was a Jamaican woman, always enforced this idea that black comes in all shades and all shades are beautiful. My mother is a lighter skinned woman, my dad was a darker skinned man, and out of my two siblings, I'm the darkest. While my mother's words helped me to not have colorist and discriminatory attitudes towards darker skinned people, especially when I was younger, I did struggle a lot with my feelings towards my skin tone, definitely during my adolescence. I generally used to have a fear of having dark-skinned children because I couldn't stomach the thought of them having to go through the bullying that dark-skinned kids go through. Another big part of my insecurities in my dark skin came from spending a significant portion of my childhood in a predominantly white school in the South, where white girls were the standard of beauty. They were the ones who were voted prom queen and got attention from boys. A lot of the black boys in my school either dated light-skinned, biracial, or white girls. And then there's the matter of black men who have no problem taking it to public spaces like Twitter. Like, I was a part of that time on Twitter, if you don't remember, like back in like early 2010s where there was team dark skin and team light skin and team brown skin. Like, and nowadays we have those YouTube interviews with those young men who be asking guys on the street, like, do you like light skinned girls or dark skinned girls? Or, those TikTok videos that have been going viral lately where the guys have their preferences on the screen and they're running to black girls or whatever girls they're into. And most of these guys in these social media platforms are proudly proclaiming their disdain for black and dark skinned women and disguising it as, it's just my preference. So let's get into preference, shall we? It is a hot button issue when it comes to the topic of colorism. By definition, preference means favor shown to one person or thing over another. Preference is a very tricky word as most use it as a means to say this is the only type of person they date, no exceptions. Also, for a lot of these people who are stating their preference, they are bringing down the other, whatever other type of women they don't want, to build up the group of women they do want, which causes me to wonder, why do you have to do that if your preference is not really supposed to be this big deal? And at the end of the day, it is a form of discrimination, and it's not okay. I'd also like to note that someone's attractiveness is not tied to their skin tone. Yes, beauty is subjective, but their skin tone should not make or break how beautiful or handsome they are, especially when you yourself are the very same race that you are going up against, because it is usually, not always, dark-skinned men who are stating this so-called preference. And they're saying they don't like dark-skinned women, which is very interesting. But to keep going, I did want to briefly mention the light-skinned men who are discriminated against by women, as many associate light-skinned men with femininity. But by the definition of colorism, at least the one that I'm using, it isn't colorism. It isn't right either, because that means they're dating dark-skinned men solely based on their masculine skin tone. And it's also further perpetuating the negative stereotypes about black dark-skinned men as dangerous. Also, as I said, skin tone does not tell you somebody's characteristics or who they are as a person. So for you to sit there and not date a light-skinned man because he is quote unquote feminine or what you think is feminine, that's discriminatory. And it's feeding into the same crap we're trying not to do. But yeah, the reason why this type of discrimination of light-skinned men isn't colorism is because having a lighter skin tone is not weaponized in the same way as having a dark skin tone, especially on a broader scale. And that also goes for the light-skinned women or biracial people who have been bullied by darker-skinned people because they are perceived as not black enough. And I'm by no means invalidating your experiences, but once again, this is discrimination, not colorism. They're not the same. Colorism is a form of discrimination. That is strictly just discrimination, and I have the definition of what discrimination is, as I said earlier. And at the end of the day, there are much deeper ramifications to having darker skin than there is to having lighter skin because of the racist society we live in. In a perfect world, there shouldn't be any preferences. No one should care about skin tone, at least as far as skin tone is concerned. But because we live in the society we do and this racial hierarchy exists, it is very discriminatory to just outright say, I don't date this group of women, this group of black women, because of literally no reason. But to hone it back into skin tone preferences, it causes me to ask, why is skin tone the very first thing you gravitate towards when looking at a potential partner, especially when you are the same race? What is it about dark skin that isn't attractive to you? Why do you feel the need to put down a group of women or men, if you are the ones that say that they don't date light-skinned men? Why do you feel the need to put them down in order to build the person that you want up? And if the answer is something colorist, i.e. some stereotypical characteristic, especially when you yourself are dark-skinned, there's a deeper issue there. I do think it has a lot to do with the environment, as those who grew up in predominantly white environments may develop colorist ideals, but as you get older, it's your job to unlearn this harmful ideology. But what if my preference is for dark-skinned women? Am I a colorist? Not by this definition. However, if you are hyper-fixed on a woman's skin tone, that can be a form of fetishization. And there should not be a preference for a skin tone, as we are all the same race. And once again, in the racial hierarchy that colorism enforces, dark-skinned women are the ones at the very bottom. It is prejudice, at best, to light-skinned women, but not colorism. As I said before, many guys I've heard say things along the lines of, light-skinned girls are my preference. You hear it in music, specifically hip-hop and rap, like Lil Wayne's verse in Every Girl, as well as many other songs that he has done. I like a long hair, thick red bone. Or when Kodak Black says in one of his songs, he doesn't want no black B. Kodak Black is also a very interesting example because he has been quite vocal about the fact that he prefers to be with lighter women because they are softer. Also, it's important to note that Lil Wayne and Kodak Black are both dark-skinned men. To keep going about the music world, especially hip-hop, there are many times when the main girl in the music video, for instance, is lighter, and the dark-skinned girls are either in the background or sometimes completely absent from the video. And then there's the treatment of black girls in the music industry. Let's think for a second about who are the biggest acts. who gets to take up space and be successful and who doesn't. And I'm no means discrediting the light-skinned women who are doing well. I'm just saying, why can't there be room for success for both light-skinned and dark-skinned women as there are for men? Let's talk about JT, okay? A member of the rap girl group City Girls, who was the target of colorism a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. Someone was asking something along the lines of, do you guys really think JT is attractive? And another girl tweeted something along the lines of, oh my gosh, like I wouldn't even be able to deal if our man left me for a girl like JT or some girl that looked like JT. And why do you think that someone asked a question like that, especially when they didn't even mention Carisha, aka Young Miami? They didn't ask why the city girls in general are attractive. They singled out JT specifically. Even when thinking about other women in rap, no one ever questioned light-skinned rappers' beauty. It's usually always the brown-skinned and dark-skinned women. And even thinking about the deep beef between Remy Ma and Nicki Minaj a couple of years ago, people had no issue with degrading Remy Ma, a dark-skinned woman's looks. Yet when people talked about Nicki, her looks were never a topic of conversation. And no one really should be talking about either women's looks in a negative light, but when in comparison to, let's say, Meek Mill and Drake's beef, would happen a year or so before, these were two men of different skin tones, and no one degraded Meek Mill's looks, as most people focused their critiques on the rapper's rapping abilities, as they should. Or let's talk about the person who made the comment about R&B singers Ari Lennox and Tiana Taylor on Twitter last year. Tiana and Ari are two darker skinned women. Tiana is more on the brown skin side, but she has prominent black features. The person said something along the lines of how they did not understand that the two women managed to have sex appeal but look like pit bulls. And when Ari spoke about her feelings of being upset on IG Live, she was gaslit and called sensitive, which is a common issue when dark-skinned women speak out about colorism. With dark-skinned women, desirability plays a large role, not only in dating, but their access to things in society. Yes, there are some dark-skinned women who are able to make strides and be successful, but more often than not, they usually have to be exceptionally beautiful or even exceptionally talented to be recognized. They're usually thin, have high cheekbones, a model-esque figure, a thinner nose, or loose textured or straight hair. Also, when thinking about well-known dark-skinned girls/women, some are almost always compared to or put in close proximity to a light-skinned girl, aka Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell, and Kelly Rowland and Beyonce. This is why some black dark-skinned women resort to getting nose jobs to get thinner noses, or even more dangerous tactics like bleaching their skin to feel more desirable so they can have that access. Like it or not, beauty is a form of capital in society, especially American society. And because dark-skinned women deviate so far from what is seen as beautiful, they benefit the least. One of my first videos on this channel talked about the erasure of dark-skinned black girls on Netflix, and really television in general. As so many times, light-skinned women or biracial women are the sole representation for black women, when in real life, that's not the case. There are all types of women that exist in the world. And for black men, I've seen people compare their looks to that of animals. This is still colorism, but beauty is not much of a social capital for men as it is for women. I have seen men who are not conventionally attractive still able to obtain success. Also, if people are targeting dark men solely because they perceive them to be masculine, that is a form of fetishization, as I said before. There are some dark-skinned men who may not think they are victims of colorism because they might be doing better in terms of dating, but as I said, on a global scale, on a societal scale, they're not winning. So, however, being seen as masculine or other stereotypes like being seen as aggressive can be quite dangerous, especially when dealing with law enforcement or other institutions. So let's get to the broader scale. I'm going to give you several statistics that reflect the deeper implications of colorism beyond dating. Women with lighter skin served 11% less time in prison compared to dark-skinned women. In a 2006 UGA study, it showed that employers preferred light-skinned black men to dark-skinned dark men, regardless of their qualifications. Dark-skinned defendants are more likely to be convicted and receive the death penalty than lighter-skinned ones. A light-skinned black male with a bachelor's degree with typical work experience was preferred over a dark-skinned male with an MBA in past managerial experience. Dark-skinned girls are 3 times more likely to be suspended than black girls with lighter skin. And in a study done by Dr. Derek Hamilton at Ohio University, it's shown that 55% of light-skinned women were married compared to 23% of dark-skinned women. And even thinking about this summer in the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of the high-profile cases were that of dark-skinned people, i.e. George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Which just brings me to the most important part, that there are bigger issues at stake here, and we need to work towards dismantling this oppressive system of colorism once and for all. So you may be asking, where do we go from here? Well, let's start. I'll give you several reasons, or several things we need to be doing. Number one, let's stop gaslighting dark-skinned women who speak out against colorism or their experience of colorism. Even if you personally has never experienced it, it doesn't give you the right to downplay someone else's experience when there has been countless evidence showing that colorism is real and it exists. It also goes for telling someone to stop being sensitive or it's just jokes when someone is the target of colorist remarks. Also, like, let's stop this nonsense of I'm only going to protect or support certain dark-skinned women that I find attractive. No, if you're going to protect Black women, protect all Black women, not just the ones that you are attracted to. Next, more representation. There's no reason why I am not seeing girls, women of my shade or darker on my television screen. Also, when Black girls are on TV, let's stop the stereotypes and show accurate and positive portrayals of dark-skinned girls. Representation matters above all else. And what do you think a dark-skinned girl thinks when she doesn't see herself on the television shows she watches, or when she is on television, she's ghetto or loud or aggressive. Also, stop colorism when you see it. Just because you may not be colorist doesn't mean you should be silent when you hear another person make colorist remarks, because silence means you're complicit and nothing is going to change. And for the light-skinned girls, if you're dealing with men who are putting dark-skinned women down, call him out on it, because maybe he'll listen to you. Also, light-skinned people, recognize that you do have a form of privilege and use it to bring up dark-skinned people, not bring them further down. Also, lighter-skinned people, stop using the excuse that I was bullied by dark-skinned people as a means to excuse or justify colorism, or even try to equate that experience to that of one of a dark-skinned person who is trying to tell their story, because I've noticed that a lot in certain spaces. Yes, what you faced, the bullying that you went through, is wrong and it shouldn't have happened. But at the end of the day, it's not colorism, at least by the definition that I stick to. Give dark-skinned people the space to speak about their experience. Be an ear to listen to when they're talking about their experiences with colorism. Don't silence them, because that is a form of silencing and gaslighting, to be honest. Next, stop hiding behind the word preference to spew your colorist and discriminatory attitudes. There's no reason you have to put another group of women down to uplift the women you do like. It's anti-Black and it's wrong. And even if you believe that preferences are not colorist, you don't have to say them out loud. Because that's the thing. A lot of men will come out in public spaces saying loud and proud the type of women they date, and no one asks you. Because that's when I believe that you're being colorist. You can have your whatever preference and go, but you don't have to take it to public spaces to bring dark-skinned women down. It makes no sense, and it needs to stop. Next, enough with the light-skinned people do this and dark-skinned people do that jokes, because it's tired. Like, come on, we've evolved past the need for those jokes. They're inaccurate. Skin tone does not equal somebody's character, who they are, and how they act. That's ridiculous. It's tired. It's not even funny anymore. Enough. Next, you can compliment a dark-skinned girl without making her skin the main topic of conversation, because I'm sure you don't do that when you talk to lighter-skinned girls. And if you do, stop that too. But especially when y'all be calling dark-skinned girls chocolate. I mean, this may be a B thing, but I've heard plenty of other dark-skinned girls say this. It's cringy. And it feels like a form of fetishization. So let's just cut it out. You can call a dark-skinned woman beautiful without having to mention her skin tone. No more pretty for a dark-skinned girl remarks, because it's a backhand compliment. And it indicates that beauty is a rarity with dark skin. And also, stop targeting dark-skinned men because you think they're more masculine or aggressive. Like I said before, skin tone does not correlate with someone's character traits. Also, stop fetishizing light-skinned women and biracial women because you want mixed babies. It's weird. Next, check your own inner colorism and anti-blackness, because sometimes even us, I've shown you, many dark-skinned people can be colorist. You can be dark-skinned and colorist. There are people who date dark-skinned people and are still colorist. So it is important for us to check our own inner colorism, because we have been taught this ideology. Whiteness is so ingrained into our conscious and even subconscious. There's so much we have to unlearn about anti-blackness. Educate yourself, because there's literally so much literature out there. And if you don't want to read books, there are movies, there are countless research and things out there to educate yourself on what colorism is. And it's time for us to unlearn this stuff and be rid of this harmful and oppressive system once and for all. And the last point I want to make is just for the parents and future parents out there. Please teach your kids to love themselves and the skin that they're in, okay? Compliment them often. Build up their self-esteem. Tell them that their hair is beautiful and their features are beautiful. For those with lighter kids, let's end the whole rhetoric that lighter is better and enforce the idea that all shades of black are beautiful. Show them positive portrayals of both light and dark-skinned people. Buy them dark-skinned dolls. Buy them books with black children on the cover. We are responsible for the next generation, because if we don't educate our children, we're just going to have the same problem. Colorism at its core is anti-black, and there should be no reason that we, as black people, should be promoting this child, especially as we know more than anyone how harmful it is to categorize and judge people over things they essentially cannot control. As I said before, colorism feeds into a much larger issue, which is the institutional racism that persists in America, as well as other parts of the world. Colorism is causing major issues within the black community. We have been taught that black is bad, and the further we are from whiteness, the less value we hold, and that is simply not true. Dark-skinned men and women have gone through some super traumatic experiences over something they simply cannot control. I'm always going to support dark-skinned women and advocate for us, because if we don't love on and support each other, who will? Racism is a much issue that we really need to be focused on, because it's literally killing our people. We need to do better. It is our job to love on each other regardless of our shade, because black is beautiful. Period. And I'm going to be linking the articles I've read, as well as articles that just give more information about colorism if you want to educate yourself and start doing the work. But yeah, I really want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching this video. If you made it to the end, a lot of labor and love went into this video. As I told you, this is something that I'm super passionate about. I'm never going to stop being the colorism police, okay? You are always going to hear me talk about colorism on this channel, on any social media platform you see me on, because I am tired. But I'm tired of talking about it, but I'm not tired about it, because if I could just help one person unlearn and understand how bad colorism is, and to, have them start to think about stop perpetuating colorism, I'm happy. And so that's what I'm here to do. So you will always hear me talk about where the black girls at. You will always see me talking about and advocating for dark-skinned girlies and pulling them up, because like I said, we're the most neglected and disrespected group of women of all. And it's time for us to be here for each other. At least I know I am. So, yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. I know it wasn't perfect, but like I said, if you stayed to the end, you a real one. But yeah, thank you all so much, and I will definitely see you in my next video. Peace out, y'all.